Hey, what's going on, fam? Welcome to the Creative Comeback Podcast. I am a lot of things in life. I am a husband, I am a father, I am a photographer, I am a creative, and I am a filmmaker, and I also dabble in YouTube. I am super pumped that you are here listening to this podcast today, and I want to go ahead and tell you that I am obsessed with failure and how creatives overcome failure to find success on the other side of it. Now, if you're here listening today, I want to encourage you to join my Facebook group called The Creative Comeback as well. And there you will find more creatives sharing and exploring failure, creativity, and finding some level of success. This is what this podcast is all about. We are going to talk about a lot of different things in this podcast, but we are going to talk with so many different creatives from all across the world, sharing their life experiences, sharing where they fail, sharing what success means, and sharing what life is on the other side of creativity. I'm pumped that you're here today. We are going to get started with this episode right now.
Brad, dude, thank you so much for agreeing to come on to the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Yeah, love it, man.
Yeah, so Inside the Photographer's Mind is kind of like just a series that I kind of started, and it was kind of like a part Dear Abby, part Oprah Winfrey, part really Jerry Springer. I'm just joking, not Jerry Springer, but it was really just to get to know each other better. It's really to get other people to know. I felt like that was like the one thing that was really missing from Clubhouse was that there's a lot of these rooms about making a lot of money and about tips and tricks of photography, but like there weren't really rooms where we had to spend like one-on-one time with one person to really get to know that person better. And I want to like my first, so this is the 12th one I've done. And in my, again, in my blueprint, as I was like writing down names and, I've just been a fan of your work. I really kind of wanted to get you in and kind of, just talk to you because I felt like, obviously I knew you as Brad and Jen, but like then when I started following your personal account, do your personal work, you find the beauty in the simplicity. And I really kind of wanted to dig into that a little bit. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the people who don't know? I mean, I obviously know who you are, but for the people who are in the room, the 2 people that are here, maybe the 10 people that are here, who knows? But we are going to use this as a podcast as well. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Brad Butcher. I work with my wife, Jen, and we've been wedding photographers for 11 years, since 2009. We started our business before we were married, and it just kind of grew into this huge passion of ours that has put food on our tables and has allowed us to live a really creative and fulfilling life. And yeah, it's something that we have tried to foster and sustain and listen to as we try to live a meaningful life with each other, with our kids, with our community. And yeah, I what else?
Yeah. Where are you from? Where are you guys located out of?
Yeah. So we live in Nashville, Tennessee. We're currently a little bit outside of the town right now. But I was born and raised in Michigan, came down here, to finish up schooling and met Jen down here. And I've stayed ever since. So I've been here. I was actually just texting my father the other day saying that I've lived in Nashville for 14 years, longer than any other place in my life, which was this just crazy moment of recognizing how this is home for me. And even though, I long for summer in Michigan and, home with mom and dad and certain things about my past, but this is my home. And it was just this crazy realization of, holy cow, this is 14 years. It's like nearly half of my life that I've been in this city. So, we love it here. Our community is a huge part of our life. Our church, our friends, the creative community here. So, yeah.
Dude, that's rad. I just had that same kind of discussion, but I was like having this conversation with my wife, and I was telling her that, I live in Northern Virginia now, and I have for the last 11 years. And this is like the one place that I've lived the longest outside of Hawaii, which I lived on and off for 25 years.
Sure.
So it's always like kind of like one of those really like unique things that have that realization that, holy crap, like this is like, is this home now, or is Michigan home?
Right. Oh man, always asking that question.
Yeah. It's like between that question and one of the other question I asked is, when am I no longer my parents' child and an adult? When is it okay for me to actually like slip in a swear word every now and then? Now that I'm in my late 30s, is that cool? So anyway, dude, so I wanted to ask you, this is just a really random question, and I wanted to kind of start this question off because I feel like a lot of what we see online and on social media is, just kind of our highlights of our life. And I think that I like this question and I like to kind of start off with this question because I think it's just interesting. But when was the last time that you actually failed at something?
Oof. Oh man, I feel like this is a daily question to ask myself. So I think you're getting the vulnerable side of Brad, because we just came off of retreat, having to answer all these questions. Was recognizing in our life that we've had a lot of changes in our life the last year. We moved houses. We moved to a smaller town outside of Nashville. We're trying to pivot some things in our business. And in the midst of all these changes, we kind of lost sight of our daily rhythms, whether that was in our marriage, in our family, or in our work. And I had to ask this question of like, who gets the best part of me every day? And I was recognizing that for the last 6 to 8 months, my wife and my kids were not getting the best part of me. And it was a tough realization. I couldn't get it out without choking up with Jen last week. But it was a big moment for me to recognize that, man, as much as all these great things are happening in our life, or we're trying to set up things in our life that are good, nothing else matters more than who I am to my wife and my children. And the fact that I wasn't showing up or haven't been showing up to the best of my ability with them for the better part of a year was something that a huge thing that I feel like I failed at. So that was a gulp moment for me, and something that I'm currently trying to work through and establish new rhythms so that, the things that are most important in life get the best parts of me, and then everything else comes after.
Yeah. So that's interesting that you're talking about rhythms. Like, what did you think got out of rhythm? I feel like in the last year or so, we've had to deal. I know what have to deal is. That's not probably the right wording, but
sure,
we've had to gain a better understanding of like as creatives, and just not being able to go out and create as freely as we wanted to. What kind of got out of rhythm? Was it just kind of like, was it like your career that was kind of more prevalent, or was it just like why weren't they getting the best of you?
Well, I feel like we had so many decisions that we were trying to make on a daily basis, where we wanted to live, how we wanted to raise our children, when are we getting a moving truck to move our house. There were a lot of logistics that came in place over the last 6 months. First, we had holidays and navigating, emotional and family expectations in the midst of COVID. And I think what had happened was we became so emotionally exhausted that when we would show up to work, we weren't working with purpose. We were just trying to scratch that comfort itch of, what would make us feel the most productive today. Let's just do that thing, as opposed to having specific times to move the needle forward, work on our business or work in our business. And then when we came home, it was like, man, am I going to lean into time with our kids? Am I going to, sink into comfort habits that make me feel better in the moment, but ultimately make me feel worse as a human? And those things just tended to add up over time. And not establishing rhythms in our morning or in our afternoon. And really, Tim, just working with purpose in everything that we were doing. Why are we showing up to work? What are the things that we're working on? What takes priority and why? And now that I know what I'm working towards and working for, I can go home to my children feeling accomplished and invigorated by what we did that day, and then I can give them the best part of me, as opposed to feeling stressed that I didn't do what I should have done, and then taking that out on my kids or my wife, or sinking into a Netflix binge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want you here to like the last 6 to 8 months were awful. I just think that there were it was a roller coaster of good weeks and tough weeks, and learning to steward our time in better ways, and really needing that time where we're discussing the hard conversations of what's going to matter when we're 80, what's our business and our life look like this year and now. How do we establish rhythms in our life to foster those things?
Yeah, that's interesting, because you did say before, as we got started, is like you guys started your business as a couple prior to being married, and then getting married and adding children to the equation. What was that like when you guys first kind of started your photography business as like just a couple, and then venturing into an eventual marriage? So, like, did you guys find that was it a little bit more challenging once, there was like, it's always weird, like when I feel like sometimes when we aren't as committed, like when you say like marriage, I mean, there's a certain level of commitment there that's a little bit more difficult to get out of. And not to say that you're ever trying to get out of it, but I'm just saying, like, even with my wife, I'll give you like an example for me. Now, my wife isn't a creative by any means of the imagination. She is very good. She's a criminal justice major. She was a juvenile domestic violence counselor. So that adds like just in a different level of expectations and questions that sometimes comes and that happens when I'm thinking about things that probably I wouldn't normally think of. But I'm always interested in how like a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend tandem works when it comes to a photography business.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Tim, it's all we've ever known. So, when we first started dating, I think we both had dreams and aspirations beyond what we were going to school for. So I went to school for music business, worked in the music industry for a few years, and Jen was a philosophy and art minor, or philosophy major, art minor. And she worked for the church that we still attend for several years. But we always kind of felt like we were yearning and longing for something more. And some of our early days of dating were spent making photographs together, and being at a liberal arts school. We went to Belmont University in Nashville. Everyone needed a headshot, band photos, theater headshots. I mean, whatever it was, there was always opportunity to lean into that. And so we started recognizing that we kind of shared this passion together, and we worked well together. And looking back, we were so green. We had no idea what we were doing. And it just seemed to fall into place for us. And then, of course, we can, if you want to dive into the wedding route, but, we got more and more opportunities in front of us that we just kept saying yes to. And finding that we found joy and being able to dream together and work together. And we are, we do have similarities, but we are very different people. And so to pick up, Jen's weaknesses and my strengths and vice versa was just this really cool thing. And yeah, we feel so lucky to be able to do this together. And, there are difficulties, and mostly in creating boundaries in our life and respecting those, to not bring marriage into work and not work into marriage. But, it just kind of feels like we're living life together on every level.
Yeah.
And that brings us closer together and almost forces us to work on our relationship more than anything else.
Yeah, that's really cool that you said that like you guys are doing it like every aspect of your life together. And that is my wife will say every now and then, she feels like, I feel, because she's not in the photography industry or anything like that, she's like, I feel like sometimes you have your life outside of our family, and then you have your life with our family. Yeah. And I think a large part of that is because the people that I communicate and talk to somewhat on a frequent basis aren't people that she interacts with. Like, I think most couples, and maybe I'm wrong, you have like a group of friends and you party and you do things with your friends. Whereas like, yes, we still have that as a couple. But I also have this, these other aspirations and things that I want to do that sometimes, may or may not include her being a part of it. Now, so I'm pretty much what I'm trying to say is like when you guys are doing everything together, and it's like, and you're saying that you're not bringing. It's hard. I mean, I would imagine it's super difficult not to bring marriage into your business and stuff like that. When you guys go and photograph weddings and you're doing stuff, are you guys doing it as a team always, or is it sometimes although it's underneath the same brand, it's Brad and Jen, but it may just be Brad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say 90% of what we do is together. We've had to divvy up some responsibilities after having children, which has been fun. And that might be more of our future as we increase the number of kids in our family. But yeah, I would say 90% of what we do is together. I shoot engagement sessions alone. Jen has done trips where we work with an interior designer pretty often on interior shoots, and she's gone on trips to Miami and done solo shoots like that. But yeah, 90% of what we do is together, which is awesome because we believe in marriage. We love our marriage. We like to work on it, and to bring that into the wedding space has always been a big passion of ours, and what makes what we do so special.
Dude, that's really cool. What so what is the one thing, so you guys, this is the only thing that you guys have known is shooting together and photographing together, and stuff like that. But what is the one thing that you wish you had known that you know today when you first started?
Bro, you gotta give me these questions beforehand.
No way, man. That's why these questions are. That's why I told you, man. I was gonna Oprah Winfrey you, and then hopefully it doesn't turn into Jerry Springer by the end of it.
Mm-hmm. I think having a little bit of foresight into how easily photography can become an identity. I think. I'm grateful I've learned that, and I'm still learning that. But in the beginning, we shot weddings or built our business for 5 or 6 years before we had children, and we love our kids so much, but it was a challenging pivot for us to recognize, oh my goodness, we've been Brad and Jen, traveling photographers, shooting weddings, or we've run successful business for 5 or 6 years, and now there's something way bigger, way more important asking for our time and attention. And that was tough for me specifically. I think it was a little easier for Jen, just being being forced to be a mother and have a child more dependent on her. But making that pivot was hard, and it took me a while to recognize why it was hard, and ultimately it came down to where my identity was placed, and creating healthier habits in those first 6 years, or healthier perspective, really, I think could have been something that helped that transition a little bit more. But honestly, Tim, it's kind of one of those things that you're like, well, I never could have known. I never would have known, and now I'm happy to have gone through it.
Yeah. And
I'm a better person because of that, and recognizing that it's still something, identity is still something I work on and try to keep in front of me every day, to not put it in the wrong place.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is the one thing that I think will forever be a problem for a lot of us who are in the photography industry, is not allowing what we do in photography to be our identity, or the successes that we have in photography be our identity. And that's a really good segue to kind of my next question. And that question is really, did you always want to do photography? Was there ever anything else that you thought, an avenue where you thought you were going to go, and did you just kind of randomly end up in photography? Was that, was photography what you always wanted to do?
No. In high school, I thought I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, which is hilarious to think back on.
Yeah.
But no, I went to, I went to Michigan State for 2 years in Michigan, of course, and then finished up school at Belmont because I thought I wanted to be in the music industry and be an artist manager. And, spent a lot of time in that world, among a lot of professionals in that world, and kind of unexpectedly learned that it was kind of taking this passion I had for music. I don't play anything. I was more so just interested in the industry, and grew up around music, but had this passion for music, and recognizing this is not what I thought it was going to be. And, you know, all the while, you know, I'm taking these photo classes at Belmont just to earn credits, right?
Yeah.
And just felt really at home with a camera, and recognizing it was something that kept calling me outside, and just wanting to take more photos and learn the camera more, and learn what it was I wanted to take photos of. And there was a day, I'll remember it forever, where my photo professor took me outside in the hall and just said, "Hey, Brad, I think you have something here, and it would be a regret if I didn't tell you to explore it." And it just completely changed the trajectory of my goals at the time, though I didn't really know what my goals were. But it was like, well, I'm working in the music industry. I was an intern. I was an agent booking concerts for a while, and just recognizing my dissatisfaction and discontentment in that world, and seeing the potential that could be in the photography world. And all the while, man, I mean, you remember back in 2009 and 2010, like, yeah. I can name, 5 or 6 wedding photographers that were actually, paving the way for what wedding photography is now. And seeing them succeed was unbelievable and super exciting and invigorating. And so I think, my discipline in the music industry, and my passion for photography, and seeing people make a living out of it in really fun and bright ways was incredibly exciting. So.
Wow, that's awesome. I love hearing that story that you just shared about your professor, like, taking you out into the hallway. And sometimes all it takes is someone believing more in us, even before we know it. Mm-hmm. I will share this story. I've told it a couple of times before, but so I used to be in the music industry as well. Not as I can't play anything, but I was a sound engineer for the Teletubbies World Tour. I'm just like,
oh my goodness, Tim,
totally outing myself there.
Your like random facts chart is unbelievable.
Yeah, I've done like a lot of like super random things, and I think a large part of that is because I've had people like your professor kind of speak into my life and kind of point me in an area where I never saw myself. And I think a large part of that is because I've had people who've really helped influence in a positive way the places of where I've wanted to go. So do you have like 2 or 3 people yourself that really have kind of like helped influence you as a photographer?
Well, I would say Chris, the professor, was a massive one. I mean, I don't think I'd be where I am today without, his guidance and encouragement there. It's kind of weird, man. I was thinking about this a few weeks ago, about where I draw inspiration from or encouragement as a photographer. And I think that for me, when I'm most connected to myself and the things that feed my heart and brain, I feel like those are the things that actually inspire me to create. So, I find a lot of inspiration in Wendell Berry, who is a philosopher and author, and just all around activist for world or environmental health, and taking time to lean into challenging conversations or challenging thoughts. And recognizing that, when I'm pointed toward the human condition or our story as humans who are all experiencing pain and joy and loss, I feel like those are things that inspire me the most. And sure, like I can name a few photographers that I'm always just kind of jaw dropping on, but I think Wendell Berry. Sorry, ask me that question one more time. I'm trying to connect with this.
Yeah, no, you're good. So the question was like, what are like the 2 or 3 people that kind of just inspire you to create?
Yeah, my kids. My author mentors, I guess is what I could call them. I love going out with my wife, man. One of my favorite things to do on the road, to do is get on the road with my wife and turn on music and just be with one another and experience a place. And just being connected with Jen and having good conversations, asking challenging questions while we're in a new place, exploring a new city or a town. Those are things that really just motivate and make me feel alive as a creative.
Yeah, your recent, I don't know how recent it was, because sometimes when you're shooting film, you may not get your film back for a couple of weeks, but your trip to Miami or to South Florida, where I think that's where you were, and some of the images that you've shared recently on your personal Instagram that are just straight top notch. Is that like something that you normally do whenever you go to a city? Do you just kind of spend some time walking around photographing things, or what interests you? Or is it always just kind of like, do you have to kind of force yourself to do that?
No, man, I feel like that's definitely something we build in time for. And with that trip was specifically a family trip. So I kind of knew that, Jen and I wanted to foster some alone time for one another. So we kind of built in mornings where we'd swap, like, the first day I would go out and shoot film and spend a little, solo time on the beach. And then I'd give her that time the next morning. But yeah, man, every chance that we have to travel, it's just a new way. It's a way to see the world for me, and it keeps me present. I don't know if you're familiar with Enneagram, but I'm a 7, so I'm a puppy dog. I'm excited, always excited for the next thing. And, film photography, it's a different avenue for me to explore my creativity outside of weddings and shooting digital for however many years we've been doing this. It's something that just slows me down and allows me to be present and in tune with what's happening. And that really started with street photography. And since our travels to New York and busier cities have slowed down, I've kind of had to figure out what that is for me now, where we're not kind of immersed in culture and people. So
do you photograph your city? Like, Nashville's a pretty cool city. One of my college roommates is from that area. The only thing I know about Nashville, because I haven't been myself, I've been everywhere else in Tennessee but Nashville.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I've had weddings in Chattanooga and Memphis, never Nashville. But he was from, I think it was a private school. I think I'm pulling back from the depths of my memory here. I want to say it was called Franklin Road Academy.
Okay, FRA.
Yeah, FRA. Yeah. So he every time he goes up, he's a photographer as well, and he's constantly photographing a city. Do you find yourself doing the same thing in Nashville, or is it just one of those things that, I live here, so you kind of take it? You may not take it as a pace as you would going somewhere else.
I do feel like I have to force myself a little bit more to keep my eyes open in Nashville. A lot of the times we're commuting from place to place, or picking up kids or taking them to soccer practice, whatever. But it's funny, Tim, we bought some land just outside of Nashville with hopes to build a house, and we sold our home back in June, and we moved 45 minutes west of the city.
Oh, wow.
To this little town. And man, it's a railway town. It's not very big. It really reminds me of the town I grew up in, and it's a very temporary thing, but it's been really fun to be out in this little town photographing rural culture. It kind of feels like we've stepped back in time, 15, 20 years. And I've had a lot of joy doing that here, and kind of trying to make a project out of it, knowing that this time is temporary and that this is a season we'll remember for a long time. And taking time to document this town and the way our family lives within it has been really fun. But now, I go back into the city, into Nashville, and I'm almost seeing it in a new way again. Not just because it's changing every day, because it's growing so quickly, but because, it's not our normal anymore. And so it's been exciting to find and rediscover Nashville again as not a resident anymore, so to speak.
Yeah. So what, so that's kind of, because it's a great piggyback for my next question for you. Is like, what do you do to keep yourself motivated and interested in your own work?
Man, that's the question, right? I think that's, diving into this hobby of film photography has really helped keep my passion for photography alive. And, being a wedding photographer for 11 years, we've discovered what works for us, how we photograph weddings. And it can be easy to fall into the routine of how we show up, what we do, how we take the photos of a couple, and being able to pick up different tools, whether that's a Leica or a medium format camera, and use a different medium and really discover, what is my voice? What am I taking pictures of? Why am I attracted to this thing? And discovering, like, what am I trying to express with and how I take photos, and always being curious about what that is. I feel like I'm a little bit of a season of recognizing that I take the same picture over and over again. I don't know if you've felt that way.
Yeah, I get into those ruts where I, even when I'm photographing my kids, I'm finding that I'm photographing them in the relatively same spaces, just because the lighting is perfect, or because our house faces east and west, so we get great sunlight in the morning and great sunlight in the back half of the house in the evening. And I find myself that, like, I don't go photograph them in, like, a place where the lighting isn't so great. So it is kind of like one of those things where I have to literally force myself to get uncomfortable.
Yeah. I feel that
with what I'm creating. So yeah, I definitely can contest to that. I think it's like one of the things as, like, just as people who, we produce images, and I mean, we're so much more than just that, as we were kind of talking about in the beginning part of, this conversation. And I think that, when we are talking about, just being, creating different work and forcing ourselves to get uncomfortable, when you're out photographing, do you typically, because you say you find yourself taking the same photographs or the same situations or something like that, do you force yourself to go into a place that would cause you to get uncomfortable? Or have you done that? Or is that something that you do, like, frequently? Or how often do you find yourself in situations where you just know that you may not know what to do?
Yeah. And I feel like the opportunities for that have been a little slim lately. I feel like the times where I feel the most uncomfortable and invigorated is when I'm in a sea of people. So I think the biggest thing that I've been trying to challenge myself in is, hey, oh man, I see this building, or I see this scene or this landscape, and I immediately reach for my camera and put it up to my eye and think, well, this is what I would take, right? Like, this is my default. How can I walk around or canvas the scene a little bit more and look for different compositions? Or, hey, if I know the lighting, like you said, the lighting is great in the back half of my house, well, kids, come in the front. Like, let me just photograph you living life in the front and find new ways to use light, or just face the challenges of different scenarios that I don't default to. So, I think that's been a little bit more difficult to understand in this season, but it's something that I'm feeling really curious about lately. Of going back to those Miami images, as I was kind of culling through those photos, I was seeing the same composition over and over. It could be a completely different subject, but the way I justified a palm tree or photographed a building landscape, it was really interesting to me. I'm like, man, what am I seeing in this that I continue to default to and not even recognize in the moment? But on the back half, recognizing I have 5 photos here. Sure, there are different buildings and different scenes, but it's the same 5 photo over and over again. And how do I break out of that cycle? And I think what you said is really important, putting ourselves in positions where we don't have a choice but to adapt to something different.
Yeah, dude, I think the self-reflection kind of aspect of it is, like, we shoot things, and especially when you're shooting film, you have a general idea of what it's going to look like depending upon the lab that you send in and how it's scanned, and what your preferences are being scanned, but being able to go back and look at those and be like, you know what, these images are good. There's nothing wrong with them. They're great images. They're exposed well, but they're the same, you know. And dude, that just speaks to my soul, because I find myself doing just consistently falling into what's easy or what I know, versus trying to like look at it from like a different perspective. I've been spending a lot of times like shooting things from like my knee. Like what I think the question that I ask myself is like, what would my oldest son see?
Yeah.
Do you know my oldest? He's only 9, so okay. It's like, what would he look at? So I've taken him with me the last few times just around my town that I live in, and I'll take him to go photograph stuff. He has a little Canon AE1. I'm trying to show him to like shoot film and to manual focus and stuff like that. But I'll look at what he's doing. 9 times out of 10, his photos are out of focus and they're not great. But he's 9. That's expected. But he's willing to take more chances at 9, not knowing any better, versus me at 39 taking like and knows better and still taking the same photograph.
Yes, man. I feel that.
Yeah. So how do you manage to stay both personal and original in your work? Because I will say this, and this isn't me like the very first few people that I've had on this, they've all have like a very unique style at seeing the world, and you're no different. When I look at the stuff that you create more on your personal side, I mean, I try my hardest not to follow other wedding photographers, because I feel like my work has a tendency to start mimicking theirs, but I love your personal work. And I love your wedding work too. I don't want to say like, oh, I don't love your wedding work. I do love your wedding work, but your personal work really kind of sings to me. But how do you try to keep it like personal and original?
I think this goes back to what I was sharing earlier, Tim, of you know, when I'm most connected to who I am and who I believe God's made me to be, I feel like I can trust and be more courageous and brave in how I pursue my creativity. Because I think we know, you know, if we take certain images, we can look successful, right? Or we can look like we know what we're doing. And we know this image is going to get a certain amount of likes. We know that people are going to share it. We know that we can increase follower count, whatever the you know, surface level goals are. But, you know, when I'm most connected to who I am, when I'm leaning into those parts of my life and understanding, you know, how I see the world, what I want life to look like, what I think is important, I think those are the things that connect me to a place or to people, or to my camera. And being able to see the beauty, or, you know, whatever is in front of me in a unique way that hopefully only I can see.
So we kind of talked a little bit about this earlier in this conversation, but I asked you, what have you failed at? Or when was the last time you failed? But this question is a little bit more, what does failure look like for you?
So at our retreat, one of the questions we do like a self audit before we dive into planning. And one of the questions was, what does success look like to you? And I wrote a few things down, but ultimately I was really surprised by this, because I didn't really recognize that I had this philosophy. But success to me is knowing that I tried my best. And so the antithesis of that would be not trying my best. And I think I find myself in scenarios where I'm asked to be the best at something, right? Whether it's being a great husband, being a great father, and I have the choice every day. Do I give my best to this, or do I make an easy choice and take a photo of a retro car in front of a cool building, or throw in a Netflix show, or put my kid in front of a TV? So I think that's what failure looks like, is stepping into something, not giving it my best, and you know, outsourcing who I am to something else.
That's interesting. So I have a couple of questions left for you, and I'm always super interested in hearing how people respond to them. So let's say for your great grandchildren, you're going to be known as Papa Brad or whatever they're going to call you, right? Mm-hmm. Is there any piece of wisdom that you would want to pass on to them?
Oh my gosh, Tim.
Yeah, dude, I told you, Oprah Winfrey, man.
Piece of wisdom from Papa Brad. I'm recognizing more and more as I get older how fragile. I'm just gonna like spitball here and hope I get somewhere with my heart processing. How fragile life is and how short it is. I mean, I'm sure you've felt this yourself, but you know, being in our 30s and watching our kids grow and recognizing how quickly time passes, just makes me recognize how important family is, how important community is. And I think a big thing that we're recognizing in our life is we can't show up, we can't be great husbands or wives, we can't be great parents without people around us sharpening us and helping us grow in ways that we can't do alone. And the more and more we invite community into our success, into our pain, into our loss, into, you know, our toiling, I think the better people we become, and recognizing that there are people with strengths out there who can do things better than we can, who can ask better questions. And yeah, I think if I could impart anything to my kids is just don't be afraid to invite others into your mess. Because it makes life richer and makes us better people along the way.
See, I love listening to people process. Like, and what I mean by process is like, you're like, oh man, you kind of put me on the spot. I don't know. And then as you're processing that answer, it's just such even for, you know, the person asking the questions is just a really beautiful way to kind of hear you get to the point to where you got. So yeah, this kind of goes to my last question for you, brother. And this is, how would you like to be remembered?
Man, I hope my legacy is something of sacrifice. I want to be remembered as somebody who built others up, who created spaces to ask hard questions, to encourage people to like dive into challenging conversation, and show up in brave ways. If I can pave a way for my kids to do that, if I could make an impact on others through how I love my wife and sacrifice my time and myself for her, then I hope I'm 80 or north of 80 on a deathbed without any regrets, man. You know, if I could, my life could be a giving away of myself and a setting a table for others.
Dude, absolutely stunner. Love that. I do want to ask you one last question, because we were talking earlier about like life blueprints and putting things in order, and you were talking about how you're just coming off this retreat. And as wedding photographers, you and I both, what is like the one thing that you learned at this retreat that you feel like you would want others to know?
I think I recognize for me personally how important disciplines and rhythms are in my life. And I think a lot of the times disciplines can almost feel like building fences around your life. But there's an analogy somewhere, and I wish I could pull it out of my back pocket, but somebody has a yard and they feel like they don't want to fence it in, but once they fence it in, their yard feels like it's bigger. And I think those disciplines and structures in our life, though they're difficult to commit to, I think there's a faith and a trust that comes along with that, of recognizing if I can commit to these things, these disciplines that I think are important in my life, then I feel like everything in my life will derive from that place. I can be a better husband, a better friend, a better leader if I'm, committing to these rhythms and recognizing the importance of them in my life. The biggest lesson for me was looking back and realizing I didn't have those over the last 6 to 8 months. And, it's not until I lost it did I recognize the importance of it. So.
Boom. Dude, Brad, thanks so much, dude. I appreciate, you and I have never, like, via just text and Messenger and stuff like that, have never really chatted in person before beyond that. And I do feel I just want to say thank you for being vulnerable. And I want to say thank you for sharing so openly. And I think that was never really, I didn't really know what my intentions for this series was going to be. Initially, I was like, I'll interview some of the people that I admire and some of the people that I like, and I'll turn it into I'll add it to my podcast and turn it into a podcast or something like that. And then the more and more I started interviewing people, the more and more I realized, yes, we are all striving for the same thing, but what makes us tick is all slightly different. And not only is it different, but the things that are important to us are different. And I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you for being vulnerable. Maybe I'm fortunate and just caught you at the right time. Maybe
there's definitely some truth to that,
man. But yeah, dude, I just wanted to say thanks, man. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Sorry I was running late today. I will say this. I know we only have a few people in this room, but if anyone has a question, you're more than welcome to raise your hand. I'll give you like a minute or two, since there's only a few of us in here, to raise your hand. And just know that this is recorded. So if you miss something, I will be sharing it, and I'll be sharing it with Brad to let him know when the episode drops.
Man, I know almost every person in this room, which is very, very fun and an honor to see all you guys here.
Yeah,
that's
dude,
so cool.
That's awesome, man. I think like these small, intimate conversations really is what makes Clubhouse unique. And I think I will say this, and I've shared this before, I don't think if Clubhouse came out in 2019 that it would be as popular as it is today.
Yeah, so true.
And I think the large part is because we were missing the other half of things, which is the voice, right? Like hearing people's voice. And I think sometimes when you type things can be thrown so far out of context by people who read it based upon how they're going that day. But hearing like someone's voice, and dude, I love hearing how passionate you are about your family and about your wife, and and just some of the other things that we chatted about. But dude, I just want to say thanks again. I really appreciate it. Hey man, now we are a little bit more than just online friends.
That's right, man.
And I definitely will be checking in with you, brother. Just want to say thanks again, Brad. And guys,
you did a great job.
Thanks, brother. And we'll see you guys on the next one. I have a couple more of these this week inside the photographer's mind, and it's not so much about gear or photography, but it's more about getting to know each other just a little bit better. All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and close the room. Thanks so much for listening. Bye, guys.
See ya.